Vocabulary of emotions for this course. In this short-term counseling course, we will discuss emotions, cognitions, and behaviors. There are multiple ways in which people talk about these psychological terms. There is the language we use when we speak informally with friends, family, and even colleagues in settings that lack an expectation for scientifically based precision. There is the language we use when there is an expectation that we will be using terms in a very specific and precise form, so we communicate with others, minimizing ambiguity and confusion. Psychology is one of those domains of discourse that is grounded in science, so precision is required. For example, if someone asks us how we feel, we may say, fine, sad, or confused. However, it may not be clear what is meant by fine, because that word is intrinsically vague, or we don't intend to relay how we feel and are only performing a speech act or engaging in a social convention in which fine is adequate enough to say. By the word sad, we may not adequately distinguish whether we are generally okay, but we experience a loss that isn't huge, or we may actually indicate that we are depressed, but social expectations or the way we were raised would have you say sad rather than depressed. The word confused is itself confused because confused isn't a feeling or emotion, but rather a cognitive state that isn't even an emotion. Counseling or psychotherapy initially grew out of the religious domain and later became a discipline that was under the umbrella of philosophy, and it wasn't until the late 19th century that it aimed at being a science. This transition contributed to confusion about psychological terms, and the field can reflect that confusion. Older psychotherapy models often use terms imprecisely. However, more contemporary models view themselves as under the umbrella of science and aim to have the precision and clarity of scientific language. This course covers a form of short-term counseling or psychotherapy that is what is called a second-wave behavioral model. This means that it grew out of behaviorism, which is a highly scientific model and beginning in the mid-1950s grew to include not only behaviors, but cognitions and emotions, and more importantly, the empirical, observable, and measurable relationships among external and internal events and responses to them in the form of emotions, behaviors, and cognitions. The language used is thus very precise, formal rather than informal. This is to say that in this course we will use terms for cognitions, emotions, and behaviors very precisely, and you will need to learn those terms and how they are used within a model. The psychotherapy model on which we will be focused is rational emotive behavior therapy. In this video, I will be focusing on the vocabulary for emotions we use in this course. So, let's get some terminology out of the way. Cognition is a precise term for thoughts and attitudes. We will focus more on precise forms of the informal word thoughts. The cognitions we will focus on are inferences and beliefs. You will have videos that will cover the nature of inferences and the nature of beliefs. Initially, this may be challenging for several reasons. 1. Perhaps the most important reason is that the word belief is used imprecisely in everyday language and in disciplines that are not grounded in science, such as theology. The word has meanings not used in science. For example, theology may talk about beliefs when talking about faith, but the word in that context, while adequate and appropriate for theology, is inadequate for this course since we will use terms scientifically. 2. Another challenge is that in English, the word feeling is used to refer to both cognitions and emotions. For example, if someone were asked how they felt when someone lied to them, they might respond, "I felt angry," or "I felt like they didn't trust me." In the first statement, the word felt is used to convey the emotion anger, whereas in the second statement the word felt conveys a cognition or cognitive state rather than an emotion. In the beginning of the course, you may flip between using words in a conversational imprecise, and non-scientific sense, and using words precisely in a scientific sense. It will be a learning process until using language scientifically becomes habitual. Expect the professor to point out when you use terms unscientifically. This is simply to help you become more precise. Why is this important? When we are acting as a caregiver and doing counseling or psychotherapy, to help the individual, we will need to accurately identify emotions, behaviors, and cognitions. Using those terms in confusing and imprecise ways minimizes the degree to which we can help the clients because there will be uncertainty how each other is using terms, and we may lack consistency contributing to confusion. Let's consider the vocabulary of emotions. First, let's divide emotions into some categories. 1. One category distinguishes positive emotions and negative emotions. 2. A second category distinguishes helpful emotions and unhelpful emotions, or functional emotions and dysfunctional emotions. 3. A third category are non-emotions. 4. A fourth category are vague and imprecise emotional states. Positive emotions are emotions that individuals generally like to experience, emotions such as happiness and joy. Helpful or functional emotions and unhelpful or dysfunctional emotions are distinguished such that helpful or functional emotions are those emotions that help an individual reach desired life goals. Examples are sadness, concern, remorse, and disappointment. Unhelpful or dysfunctional emotions are emotions that tend to impede or sabotage the attainment of desired life goals. Examples of unhelpful or dysfunctional emotions are depression, anxiety, guilt, and rage. Do not confuse positive emotions and helpful or functional emotions. For example, if someone experiences the death of a close loved one and experiences happiness or joy, that would tend to be dysfunctional and is often observed when someone is raised to believe that experience sadness is inappropriate. Experience happiness might delay or sabotage the helpful process of grieving, for which sadness can help the individual change the cognitions about the loss that will actually help the individual move on with life. Another example would be if a parent had a child with a very high fever and the parent experienced joy. That could be very serious. The positive emotion in that context could sabotage the parent from taking appropriate action to reduce the fever or contact a physician to get help. Thus, positive emotions may or may not be helpful or functional. On the other hand, a negative emotion might in particular contexts be very helpful. For example, if the same parent of a child with a fever felt deep concern, a negative emotion, this negative emotion might spur the parent to seek help for the child. Thus, the negative emotion concern is helpful or functional. On the other hand, if the parent experienced high anxiety, that negative emotion would be unhelpful or dysfunctional and impede the parent from responding appropriate because the anxiety could typically impede the logical reasoning needed to make an appropriate decision. In this course, what would be considered true emotions are the following: concern, anxiety, sadness, depression, remorse, guilt, annoyance, rage, disappointment, hurt, envy, jealousy, and shame. We would use such terms to refer to emotion. What would be considered non-emotions are the following: confused, doubtful, stressed, hopeless, helpless, overwhelmed, abandoned, disliked, frustrated, loved, disapproved, and rejected. These non-emotions include physiological states, such as stressed and frustrated, as well as cognitive states, such as confused, hopeless, and helpless. We would not use such terms to refer to emotions. What would be considered to be vague or imprecise references to emotions are terms such as fine, bad, good, not good, messed up, down, and okay. We will not use such terms to refer to emotions. We will have several videos helping you to distinguish helpful or functional negative emotions from unhelpful or dysfunctional negative emotions. This may at times be challenging because we are at a point in history, especially in the Western world, in which many individuals think that only positive emotions are helpful and all negative emotions are unhelpful. It is not uncommon for clients who are depressed and their goal is to be happy, not realizing that being happy about a very negative event is often not an adaptive or helpful response because the individual doesn't learn how to address negative events. Experience a helpful negative emotion, adopt helpful cognitions about negative events, and learn how to behave in ways that will help eventually achieve happiness or contentment. Also, the individual will learn not to despair negative events because the individual will have learned how to be resilient in the face of adversity. I hope this video helps you better understand a scientific approach toward emotions that will help you in this course. Remember, learning these distinctions takes time and is a process. It is helpful to progress in a process if you refrain from making yourself anxious if you encounter challenges, which is typically the case if you hold dysfunctional cognitions, such as, I am never going to understand this stuff, I am not cut out for this, I am so dumb, the professor is being far too hard on me. Learning this stuff shouldn't be so difficult. Better cognitions to hold would be, learning this is a bit challenging but means nothing about me and my intelligence. I wish that learning this was easier, but it isn't right now, so I will keep it in the hope I learn it. The professor may seem picky and difficult, but his goal is to help me be the best I can be so I can better help those in need. I have encountered difficult material before and learned it. I can do it again. Also, remember that the professor is devoted to helping you learn the material in this course. Email him through Canvas anytime that you don't understand something. Take action and don't let it slide. All the best.